Well, A Song of Shadows is the 13th Charlie Parker novel, so unlucky perhaps, but I hope not. And its basis is a visit I paid to a bar in Maine. A lot of my stories involve being in a bar, but I was in a bar watching TV with the people who were having a drink. There was a television in the corner of the bar, and their attention was caught by a very old man being led up a set of courtroom steps in prison uniform. And he was really, really very old. And it's quite unusual to see somebody that old with security around them. Everybody wondered what he had done. And he was a former concentration camp guard named Hans Breyer. And I vaguely knew about him because I had been reading about him in the papers for some time. And Breyer was, he had been living in the United States. And the Americans had been trying to extradite him for years, and he had fought them all the way. And this was to be Breyer's final appearance before a judge. The judge was going to make a decision on whether Breyer should be extradited back to Germany for his crimes. And so the judge sat Breyer in front of him and said, "Tomorrow I'm going to give my decision." And Breyer was brought back to his cell. In fact, I think he was brought to a hospital because he was so ill. And the judge arrived the next morning and said that he had announced that Breyer was to be extradited, that the documentation was fine, but Breyer had died during the night. So at the very final moment, he got what he wanted, which was to die on American soil and not be tried for his crimes. But by then I'd become very interested in the hunt for these old Nazis, these people who had come to America to create a new life. And the more I discovered about them, the more that I found all of the assumptions that I had were wrong, in that I had assumed that immediately after the Second World War we had the Nuremberg trials and that the Allies had continued to search for these people for decades. But in fact, for the best part of 30 years, nobody looked for them. Nobody cared, because immediately after the Second World War we had the Cold War. And so the only people who had knowledge of what life was like behind what became the Iron Curtain were people who had led death squads. And so the Americans, and the British in particular, got into bed with just the most appalling people. It was a complete moral collapse. It was pragmatism over justice. And it's quite interesting, you're talking about it in Lyon, where one of the people who escaped justice was Klaus Barbie. The CIA gave Barbie free passage to South America in return for information. It was extraordinary what was done. So that became the basis for the book.